Imagine standing at the edge of a storm, unshaken, while everything around you rages. This is the power of Stoic resilience. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Those words aren't just ancient wisdom, they're a battle cry for anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed by life's chaos. Stoicism isn't about passive acceptance, it's a warrior's mindset, a practical toolkit for building unbreakable focus, discipline, and success. And here's the truth, you don't need to be a philosopher or a Roman emperor to wield it. These principles are as relevant today as they were 2,000 years ago, whether you're navigating a high-pressure career, personal setbacks, or the daily grind. Think about the last time you faced a challenge that seemed impossible. Maybe it was a missed opportunity, a rejection, or a moment when doubt crept in. What if you had a roadmap, not just to survive those moments, but to thrive because of them? That's exactly what the 24 Stoic Actions offer. A step-by-step guide to transforming obstacles into fuel, fear into clarity, and effort into unstoppable momentum. This isn't abstract theory. It's how Olympic athletes, CEOs, and artists alike train their minds to stay focused under pressure. The same techniques that helped Marcus Aurelius lead an empire can help you take control of your focus, your time, and your potential. So why does Stoicism work where other self-help methods fall short? Because it doesn't sugarcoat reality. It prepares you for it. Every action we'll explore is designed to cut through distraction, build mental toughness, and align your choices with what truly matters. Whether it's mastering your mornings, reframing failure, or silencing self-doubt, these strategies are battle-tested. And the best part, they don't require luck, talent, or privilege, just the willingness to act. By the end of this journey, you'll have more than inspiration, you'll have a blueprint. So let's begin where every great transformation starts, with the decision to stop waiting for the storm to pass and learn to dance in the rain. What if your biggest obstacle isn't the situation itself, but how you choose to see it? This is the essence of the first Stoic action, mastering your perception. Epictetus, a former slave-turned-philosopher, put it bluntly, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." In other words, suffering doesn't come from what happens to us, but from the meaning we assign to it. Think about that for a moment. Two people can face the exact same setback, a missed promotion, a failed project, and walk away with entirely different experiences. One crumbles under self-doubt, while the other sees it as feedback, a chance to grow. The event is identical, but the perception changes everything. Let's make this real with a modern example. Imagine you're handed a high-pressure assignment at work with an impossible deadline. Your first reaction might be panic, frustration, even resentment. But what if you flip the script? Instead of seeing it as a burden, you view it as a test of your creativity and resilience. Suddenly, the same challenge becomes an opportunity to prove your adaptability, to learn under fire, to stand out. That shift in perception doesn't just reduce stress, it transforms the entire experience. Now, consider a recent situation where you felt stuck or defeated. Maybe it was a disagreement with a colleague, a personal goal that slipped away, or a day where nothing went right. Pause and ask yourself, did the problem lie in the circumstance or in how you interpreted it? The Stoics believed that while we can't always control what happens to us, we always control how we respond. This isn't about pretending things are fine when they're not. It's about recognizing that your perspective is the lens through which every challenge becomes either a roadblock or a stepping stone. So here's your invitation. Take one situation from this week and reframe it. If you felt overwhelmed, ask what it taught you. If you faced rejection, consider what it freed you to pursue. This simple practice is the foundation of Stoic resilience, the unshakable understanding that your mind, not your circumstances, holds the keys to your success. Seneca, one of the great Stoic teachers, offered a radical idea that cuts through modern anxiety. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. At the heart of this insight lies the second Stoic action, mastering the dichotomy of control. Picture a circle. Inside it, everything you influence, your efforts, your choices, your reactions. Outside it, everything else, other people's opinions, the weather, the past. Most of our emotional turmoil comes from blurring these lines, exhausting ourselves over what we can't change while neglecting the power we do hold. Think of a traffic jam. You can't control the red taillights stretching ahead, but you control whether you white-knuckle the steering wheel or use the time to listen to an audiobook. The situation is identical, but your focus determines whether it drains you or fuels you. This is the Stoic secret. Proactive energy flows toward the inner circle. Reactive energy leaks outward. Ancient warriors used this principle to stay calm in battle. Today, it helps entrepreneurs pivot after setbacks, athletes bounce back from losses, and parents stay patient during chaos. Here's how to put it into practice. Grab a notebook and divide a page into 2 columns. Label one, within my control, the other, outside my control. Now list your current worries, that critical comment from a coworker, outside, how you prepare for your next presentation, inside, the stock market swings. Outside, your daily habits, inside. This exercise isn't just about sorting, it's about spotting patterns. You'll likely find that most mental clutter lies in the second column, hijacking focus from where you can actually make a difference. So let's pause here. What's one thing weighing on you right now that belongs in the outside column? Maybe it's a family member's choices, a delayed flight, or someone else's approval. The moment you name it, something remarkable happens. You reclaim agency, not by changing the external factor, but by redirecting your attention to the inner circle, the space where all real growth begins. This is the Stoic art of turning resistance into redirection. The next time frustration rises, ask this razor-sharp question: is this within my control? If not, release the mental grip. If yes, take the smallest step forward. That shift from passive frustration to active focus is how ordinary people build extraordinary resilience. After all, storms don't stop, but sailors learn to adjust their sails. Picture waking up tomorrow to find the one thing you rely on most, your health, your job, your closest relationship suddenly gone. How would your priorities shift? This uncomfortable exercise lies at the heart of the third Stoic action, negative visualization. The ancient Romans called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, not to dwell on pessimism, but to sharpen gratitude and steel your resilience. Seneca captured its power in a letter to his friend Lucilius. He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. Think of it as emotional fire drills. Just as schools practice evacuations not because they expect disaster, but to ensure calm if it comes, negative visualization trains your mind to face adversity without crumbling. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies show that people who mentally rehearse challenges from job interviews to medical diagnoses handle the real event with greater clarity and less distress. Take the world of entrepreneurship. Founders who visualize their startup failing aren't inviting disaster. They're identifying hidden risks and building contingency plans. When a real crisis hits a key client leaving, a supply chain breakdown, they pivot faster because they've already walked through the scenario in their minds. The same applies to personal life. Imagine your car breaking down on a busy highway. If you've mentally rehearsed staying calm, calling roadside assistance, and adjusting your schedule, the actual event becomes manageable rather than paralyzing. Here's how to practice this today. Set aside 5 minutes tonight to contemplate one thing you deeply value: your career, a relationship, your physical ability. Now envision losing it, not to catastrophize, but to uncover hidden layers of appreciation. Notice how your breath catches when you picture life without it. That tightness in your chest, that's your brain recalibrating priorities in real time. When you return to reality, you'll find ordinary moments, your morning coffee, a colleague's laugh glow with newfound significance. This week, choose one mundane moment you typically rush through: eating lunch, hugging a loved one, walking your dog. Before it happens, pause and visualize it being gone. Then experience it fully, as if reclaimed. That's Stoic gratitude in action, not just counting blessings, but feeling their weight, because the ultimate paradox of negative visualization. By rehearsing loss, you learn to hold the present with open hands, neither clinging in fear nor taking it for granted. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, "The obstacle is the way." 4 words that capture the 4th Stoic action: cultivating discomfort as a path to strength. He wasn't praising suffering for its own sake, but recognizing what modern science now confirms: growth happens at the edge of our comfort zones. The Stoics didn't just endure hardship, they actively sought it through practices like sleeping on the floor, wearing thin cloaks in winter, or fasting for days. This wasn't self-punishment, it was training for life's inevitable storms. Consider Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who walked barefoot through snowstorms and wore outdated clothing to court. His contemporaries mocked him, but Cato understood something profound. By choosing discomfort voluntarily, he immunized himself against fear when real adversity struck. Centuries later, Navy SEAL used the same principle in Hell Week, and Silicon Valley CEOs embrace discomfort challenges like cold showers or waking at 4:30. The mechanism is identical: strengthening the mind by temporarily removing life's cushions. Modern life offers endless comforts at the tap of a screen: fast food delivered in minutes, climate-controlled homes, endless entertainment. Yet these conveniences come with hidden costs. Digital dopamine hits erode focus, constant comfort makes small irritations unbearable, and avoiding all hardship leaves us brittle when real challenges arrive. That's why Stoic training matters now more than ever. Voluntary discomfort isn't about rejecting modern tools, it's about maintaining mastery over them. A CEO who practices intermittent fasting isn't rejecting pleasure, she's ensuring hunger for success outweighs hunger for distractions. Start small. Take a cold shower for the last 30 seconds tomorrow morning. Leave your phone in another room during dinner. Walk instead of driving for short errands. Each time you choose slight discomfort over convenience, you're not just building discipline, you're rewiring your brain's relationship with resistance. Neuroscience shows that voluntary discomfort increases gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center for willpower. Ancient Stoics didn't have MRI machines, but they knew this truth intuitively: comfort is the enemy of progress. So here's the challenge: what's one modern convenience you'll intentionally set aside this week? Maybe it's skipping the snooze button, turning off notifications for an afternoon, or taking the stairs instead of the elevator. The goal isn't to suffer, but to remind yourself that you're stronger than your circumstances. Because when life inevitably throws real hardship your way, a missed deadline, a financial setback, a personal loss, you won't panic. You'll have already trained for it. What does it mean to live a good life? Not by society's standards: flashy cars, viral fame, corner offices, but by your own deepest values. This is the heart of the 5th Stoic action: defining your virtues. The ancient Stoics believed true success wasn't measured in external trophies, but in four cardinal qualities: wisdom to see clearly, courage to act despite fear, justice to treat others fairly, and temperance to master your desires. Epictetus put it bluntly: first tell yourself what kind of person you want to be, then do what you have to do. That gap between who you aspire to be and how you actually live. That's where Stoicism shines. Consider two entrepreneurs building similar businesses. One chases revenue at any cost, cutting corners and burning out employees. The other prioritizes fair wages, sustainable growth, and ethical decisions even when it's harder. Both might achieve financial success, but only one aligns with Stoic virtue. The difference isn't in their results, but in their choices. Modern culture often confuses achievement with excellence. A viral social media post might bring temporary attention, but does it reflect courage or wisdom? A promotion earned through office politics might boost your salary, but does it align with justice? Here's where it gets practical. Grab a notebook and write your personal virtue manifesto, a living document that answers one question: what qualities do I refuse to compromise on, no matter the circumstance? Start with the Stoic 4, then make them yours. Maybe wisdom looks like dedicating 30 minutes daily to learning instead of scrolling. Perhaps courage means having that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Justice could manifest as giving honest feedback to a struggling colleague rather than silent criticism. Temperance might mean setting boundaries with work to protect family time. This isn't about perfection, it's about clarity. When faced with a tough decision, say, a lucrative offer that conflicts with your ethics, your virtues act as a compass. The Roman statesman Cato famously walked out of a theater when he saw crowds cheering corrupt politicians, not because he was rigid, but because he refused to normalize what violated his principles. That's the power of a virtue manifesto. It turns abstract ideals into daily actions. So tonight, light a candle, open a blank page, and ask yourself, who do I want to be when no one's watching? Write until it stings, then place that manifesto where you'll see it daily: a bathroom mirror, a phone lock screen. Because in a world that constantly tries to redefine success for you, your virtues are the one thing no one can take away. They're not just how you live, they're why you live, and that makes all the difference. You will die. Let that sink in for a moment, not as a morbid thought, but as the ultimate focusing lens. The Stoics called this practice Memento Mori, Latin for remember you must die. Far from being a dark obsession, it was their secret weapon for cutting through life's distractions. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Imagine living with that clarity every morning. No procrastination, no petty arguments, no energy wasted on things that don't matter. Just raw, intentional action. Consider Steve Jobs' famous Stanford commencement speech, where he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." That's Memento Mori in modern form, a billionaire CEO using mortality as a compass. He wasn't dwelling on death, he was using it to strip away fear and hesitation. The same principle fueled Roman generals leading armies, artists creating timeless works, and ordinary people making courageous decisions. When time feels finite, every choice carries weight. Now apply this to your own life. What would shift if you genuinely lived as if this year, this month, even this week, could be your last, not in a reckless way, but with purposeful intensity? That project you've been postponing, the difficult conversation you've avoided, the passion you've sidelined for someday. Mortality doesn't just remind us of life's end, it reveals how we're spending our middle. The Stoics weren't suggesting we brood over death, they were urging us to audit our days. Here's a practical exercise. Tonight, journal 3 sentences. If I died tomorrow, what would I regret not doing? Who would I regret not becoming? What trivialities would I realize wasted my time? Then, and this is crucial, use those answers to edit your life immediately. Cancel what doesn't align, prioritize what does. Legacy isn't built in grand gestures at the end. It's crafted in small, daily choices made with eyes wide open. So let's flip the script. Instead of fearing mortality, wield it. Let it sharpen your decisions like a whetstone on a blade, because when you stare unflinchingly at life's brevity, something extraordinary happens. You stop waiting for permission to live. Every morning before dawn, Marcus Aurelius would light a lamp and write in his journal, not about empire-building strategies, but about governing himself. Those private pages, later published as Meditations, reveal a startling truth. The most powerful man in Rome spent his quiet hours dissecting his own thoughts like a scientist examining specimens. This wasn't diary keeping, it was mental training. The Stoics practiced what modern psychologists call metacognition, thinking through a simple triad: morning preparation, evening review, and gratitude mapping. Start with the pre-dawn ritual. Before checking your phone or diving into tasks, ask yourself 2 questions. What potential challenges will today present, and which virtues will I need to meet them? A tech CEO we interviewed begins each day this way, jotting down, for example, that a board meeting might trigger impatience, so he'll need temperance, or that pitching a new client will require courage. This isn't predicting the future, it's preparing the mind. As dusk falls, the Stoic evening review begins. Seneca described it as examining the wounds of the day. Not to brood over mistakes, but to surgically analyze them. Divide your page into 3 columns: what went well, where did I falter, and how can I improve? A finance executive shared how this practice transformed her leadership. After noticing a pattern of snapping at her team under stress, she identified the trigger, skipping lunch, and implemented a simple fix: protein-rich midday meals. The journal didn't judge her, it revealed cause and effect. Gratitude, the 3rd pillar, wasn't fluffy positivity for the Stoics, it was armor against discontent. Each night, write 3 specific things that served you, not just my family, but my daughter's laugh during breakfast, or the contractor who fixed the leak promptly. Research shows this practice increases resilience by 25%. A startup founder credits it with keeping him grounded during funding rejections. Listing small wins daily trained my brain to spot opportunities, not just obstacles. Your challenge: a 3-day journaling sprint. Day 1, morning preparation with 2 virtue-focused intentions. Day 2, evening review with radical honesty. Day 3, gratitude entries with sensory details. No poetic prose required, just raw observations. Like Marcus scratching notes by lamplight, you're not writing for posterity, but for self-mastery. The ink becomes a mirror, revealing patterns invisible in the rush of daily life. And that's where real change begins, not in grand gestures, but in the quiet dialogue between you and the page. Epictetus once told his students, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." That simple sentence holds the key to the 8th Stoic action: detaching from outcomes. Here's the paradox: the more obsessed you become with a specific result, the more you undermine your ability to achieve it. Think of an Olympic sprinter crouched in the starting blocks. If her focus is solely on the gold medal, she's already lost. But if she's absorbed in the rhythm of her breath, the explosive push from her legs, the perfect angle of her torso, the medal becomes a byproduct rather than the target. That's the difference between a process-oriented mindset and a goal-oriented one. Modern psychology calls this the Ikigai principle, the Japanese concept of finding joy in the doing rather than the done. A chef doesn't cook for Michelin stars. She cooks for the sizzle of ingredients, the balance of flavors, the way a perfectly seared fish flakes under a fork. The stars may come, but they're not the compass. This isn't about abandoning ambition. It's about redirecting your attention to what you can control, your preparation, your effort, your presence. When you anchor yourself in the process, outcomes lose their power to derail you. Consider a musician auditioning for a symphony orchestra. If he walks into the room fixated on winning the spot, his fingers tighten. His interpretation becomes mechanical, calculated to please rather than express. But if he focuses on the music itself, the way the bow glides across strings, the emotional arc of the piece, the performance transcends competition. The judges aren't just hearing technical skill, they're witnessing artistry. This applies far beyond the stage. A salesperson obsessed with hitting quota becomes pushy. One focused on solving clients' problems builds trust. A writer fixated on bestseller lists produces strained prose. One immersed in storytelling crafts sentences that linger. Now, reflect on your own life. Recall a time when your attachment to an outcome, a promotion, a relationship milestone, a number on the scale stole your peace. How did that fixation distort your actions? Maybe you micromanaged a team project to the point of stifling creativity. Perhaps you rushed a romantic conversation because you needed it to go right. The Stoic insight here is brutal but liberating. Outcomes are never entirely yours to command. The market might crash the day you launch your business. A judge might misinterpret your presentation. A gust of wind might redirect your golf ball. But your effort, your integrity, your willingness to show up fully, those remain unshakable. Here's the practice. For one goal this week, whether it's a workout, a difficult conversation, or a creative project, shift your metric of success. Instead of measuring the result, track only 3 things. Was I fully present? Did I give my best effort? Did I act in alignment with my values? The outcome may surprise you, but something far more important won't: your self-respect. Because at life's finish line, no one asks what you won, only who you became in the striving. Seneca called anger temporary madness, a fire that burns brightest when reason has already left the room. Picture a seasoned judge presiding over a volatile trial. As attorneys raise their voices and witnesses grow combative, she maintains an unshakable calm, not because she lacks passion, but because she knows the power of that critical pause between stimulus and response. In Stoic philosophy, this gap is where wisdom lies. It's the difference between a knee-jerk reaction that escalates conflict and a measured response that dissolves tension. Consider how often we forfeit this power in daily life. A colleague critiques your idea in a meeting, and your face flushes with defensiveness. A stranger cuts you off in traffic, and your hand hovers over the horn. In these moments, the Stoics would remind us, the initial emotion isn't the problem, it's surrendering to it without examination. Anger, frustration, even excitement can cloud judgment when given free rein. But when you insert space between the trigger and your action, something remarkable happens. You reclaim agency. Take heated digital exchanges. Ancient Rome didn't have email, but Marcus Aurelius might have recognized the modern trap of typing furiously after reading an inflammatory message. The executive who waits 24 hours before replying often finds the original offense seems smaller with fresh eyes, or consider debates where voices rise. The parent who pauses to ask, "Can you help me understand why you feel this way?" instead of snapping back shifts the entire dynamic. These aren't passive acts, they're strategic choices to de-escalate and redirect. Here's your challenge. Next time frustration surges, whether from a micromanaging boss, an unfair comment, or a spilled coffee, activate your pause button. Literally count to 10. Breathe into the space where impulse lives. In that stillness, ask Seneca's razor-sharp question, will this matter in a year? Most often, you'll find the energy shifts from your clenched jaw to your clear mind, because the secret isn't suppressing emotion, it's refusing to let emotion dictate your next move. That's how ordinary moments become masterclasses in self-command. Friedrich Nietzsche gave the Stoic concept of Ammer fati its sharpest edge when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Ammer fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity." At first glance, this seems radical, not just accepting fate, but loving it. The Stoics took this further. Every setback, every so-called misfortune, isn't just something to endure but raw material to sculpt into strength. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Consider the modern startup world. Airbnb's founders faced rejection after rejection in their early days. Investors called their idea ridiculous. Who would rent an air mattress in a stranger's living room? Instead of seeing this as proof of failure, they treated each no as feedback. They refined their pitch, adjusted their model, and eventually turned those obstacles into the foundation of a hospitality revolution. The same pattern repeats in scientific breakthroughs, artistic masterpieces, and personal reinventions. The difference between those who crumble and those who create. One group resists reality, the other engages with it like a collaborator. Here's the shift: when you stop classifying events as good or bad and start asking, how can this serve me? Everything changes. A missed flight becomes uninterrupted time to plan. A brutal critique reveals blind spots in your work. Even grief, as devastating as it is, can carve out reservoirs of compassion you never knew you had. The Stoics weren't advocating delusional positivity. They were practicing alchemy, transforming leaden circumstances into golden insights. So take a moment now. What recent setback have you labeled as misfortune? Maybe it was a project that fell through, an unexpected expense, or a plan that unraveled. Now flip the script. Ask, what did this reveal about my assumptions? What strengths did it force me to develop? What better path might it be nudging me toward? Ammer fati isn't about passive resignation. It's about active partnership with reality. When you stop fighting the current and start learning to swim with it, you'll find the very things you thought were holding you back have been propelling you forward all along. The next time life hands you lemons, don't just make lemonade, study the lemons. Plant the seeds, experiment with the rind, because the deepest victories aren't those that come despite the obstacles, but because of them. That's the secret the Stoics knew. Fate isn't your opponent, it's your co-author. Seneca once warned his student Lucilius about the danger of hopping from book to book, collecting knowledge like scattered leaves rather than cultivating deep roots. 2,000 years later, his words cut through the digital noise with eerie precision. The average person now consumes the equivalent of 174 newspapers worth of information daily, not because we need it, but because our attention has become the most coveted commodity of the modern age. The Stoics treated focus like gold. We treat it like confetti, scattering it across notifications, headlines, and endless scrolling. Imagine walking through ancient Rome's bustling forum. Merchants hawk wares, politicians debate loudly, gossip spreads through crowds. Now open your phone. The parallels are unsettling. Twitter threads replace street corner rumors, influencer drama mirrors gladiatorial spectacle, and the never-ending news cycle echoes the imperial couriers bringing updates from distant provinces. The medium has changed, but the psychological toll remains identical: fractured attention, shallow thinking, and a constant hum of anxiety. Here's the Stoic insight we've forgotten: not all inputs are created equal. Marcus Aurelius journaled about filtering impressions like a sieve, keeping only what served his growth. Today, we've removed the sieve entirely, drowning in a fire hose of hot takes and algorithmically amplified outrage. A tech CEO we studied takes this literally. He starts his week by deleting all non-essential apps from his phone, reinstalling only what directly supports his priorities. By Friday, his screen resembles a monk's cell: messaging, maps, and a single reading app. Try this experiment. For the next 7 days, declare an input fast. Each morning, ask, does this information nourish or deplete me? Cancel subscriptions to newsletters you skim mindlessly. Turn off news alerts that spike your cortisol without changing your actions. Notice how often you reach for your phone, not out of purpose, but reflex. One Wall Street trader reported gaining back 11 hours weekly just by uninstalling TikTok and muttering 2 words before clicking any link. Why now? Your attention isn't just another resource, it's the foundation of your sovereignty. Every time you check your phone during a lull in conversation, every hour lost to autoplay videos, you're trading fragments of your life for someone else's agenda. The Stoics didn't advocate ignorance, they championed intentionality. So tonight, audit your digital forum. Keep the books that challenge you, the conversations that deepen you, the news that demands action from you. The rest, let it fade like whispers in Rome's long-vanished streets. Epictetus observed that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This simple anatomy lesson holds the key to the 12th Stoic action: harnessing the power of deliberate communication. In an era where hot takes and impulsive tweets dominate, the ability to speak with purpose becomes revolutionary. Think of a seasoned diplomat negotiating a tense ceasefire. Every word carries weight, every pause serves strategy, and complaining about obstacles never outweighs proposing solutions. That's the Stoic ideal: speech as a scalpel, not a sledgehammer. Consider how often we squander this power. The coworker who hijacks meetings with circular complaints instead of concise solutions. The friend who vents endlessly about problems but rejects every suggestion. Even social media, where outrage often masquerades as discourse. The Stoics recognize that careless speech doesn't just waste time, it erodes credibility and entrenches powerlessness. Marcus Aurelius cautioned himself in his journal, ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? That question transforms communication from reactive noise to intentional force. Take the tech CEO who banned complaint-driven meetings at his startup. Instead of "the client is impossible," teams had to frame challenges as "here's what we've tried, and here's where we need fresh approaches." Within months, problem-solving velocity doubled, or the teacher who replaced "these kids won't listen" with "what engagement strategies haven't I tried yet?" Small linguistic shifts that change outcomes. This isn't about suppressing frustration, it's about channeling it constructively. Your challenge, a 24-hour complaint fast. Not positivity toxic, just solution-focused. When traffic snarls, note the delay silently, then use the time to listen to an educational podcast. When a colleague annoys you, skip the break room gossip and either address it directly or let it go. Track how much mental energy you reclaim when speech becomes intentional rather than automatic. You'll discover what the Stoics knew: silence isn't emptiness, it's the space where real thinking begins. Tonight, reflect on your last 3 conversations. How many words were truly necessary? How many merely filled air, like a sculptor chipping away excess marble to reveal the form within? purposeful speech reveals your best thinking. And in that clarity, people start listening not because you're louder, but because every syllable carries weight. That's the quiet power Epictetus promised when he called silence the universal refuge. The obstacle is the way, 4 words that sound like a motivational poster but function as an ancient psychological shield. When Marcus Aurelius scrawled that phrase in his private journal, he wasn't offering empty inspiration. He was documenting a battlefield strategy for the mind. The Stoics didn't see challenges as interruptions to life. They were the curriculum. Every setback, every delay, every ounce of friction became a repetition in the gym of resilience. Think of Olympic weightlifters. They don't curse the barbell for being heavy. They recognize its resistance is what builds their strength. Now consider Admiral James Stockdale, shot down over Vietnam and imprisoned for 7 years in the infamous Hanoi Hilton. Beaten regularly, kept in solitary confinement, denied medical care conditions designed to break both body and spirit. Yet when asked which prisoners struggled most to survive, Stockdale gave a startling answer: the optimists. Those who kept saying, "We'll be out by Christmas," only to collapse into despair when the holidays came and went. Stockdale survived by embracing brutal reality while maintaining unshakable faith in his ultimate resilience. He later credited Epictetus' teachings for this paradoxical mindset. You must never confuse the two, that you will prevail in the end, and that you must confront the most brutal facts of your current reality. This wasn't positive thinking, it was obstacle immunity in action. Modern psychology calls this anti-fragility, the phenomenon where systems actually grow stronger under stress. Muscles tear to rebuild denser fibers. Vaccines introduce weakened viruses to build immunity. Startups that survive early crises often outlast competitors who had smoother launches. The principle is universal. Controlled exposure to difficulty inoculates against catastrophe. A tech CEO, we studied schedules, disaster days, where teams intentionally crash systems to identify weak points. Parents practicing gentle discipline know that letting children experience minor conflicts builds emotional regulation far better than constant intervention. Here's the pivot. What if your current struggle isn't a detour but the main road? That project that's stretching your skills thin, it's forging adaptability. That financial pinch teaching resourcefulness. Even loneliness can be the chisel carving out deeper capacity for connection. The Stoics trained like athletes for this. Seneca would practice poverty, wearing threadbare clothes and eating meager meals to remember comfort wasn't guaranteed. Cotto deliberately walked through Rome's streets, enduring insults to harden his composure. They weren't masochists, they were building calluses where life would inevitably rub them raw. So tonight, take out a sheet of paper. At the top, write your most frustrating current obstacle. Below it, answer, what muscle is this forcing me to develop? Patience, creativity, boundary setting. Then, design one small daily drill to strengthen that muscle voluntarily. If work chaos triggers you, spend 10 minutes organizing a junk drawer to practice imposing order. If rejection stings, make one low-stakes ask where no won't wound. Like a sailor tying knots before the storm hits, you're not waiting for life to test you. You're testing yourself first, because when you stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this preparing me for? The obstacle stops being a wall and becomes a ladder. Seneca stared at a sundial in the gardens of his villa and wrote words that cut through 20 centuries of time. Life is long if you know how to use it. Not a minute more, not a second less than what we're given, yet why do so many reach their final days feeling robbed? The answer lies in a modern illusion, mistaking motion for progress. Ancient Rome had no social media, no bingeable shows, no inboxes that refill like magic, but human nature hasn't changed. We still confuse being busy with being effective, filling hours instead of investing them. The Stoics treated time like gold coins in a purse, finite, precious, and easily pilfered by distractions disguised as duties. Consider Warren Buffett's 5-25 rule. When his pilot felt stuck in his career, Buffett had him list 25 professional goals, then circle the top 5. The cruel twist: the remaining 20 became an avoid at all costs list, not because they were bad, but because they were good enough to distract from the extraordinary. That's Stoic time management in modern dress, ruthless prioritization that stings before it liberates. Every yes to a trivial task whispers a no to something consequential. Here's where it gets practical. Conduct a time audit like you're tracking expenses. For 3 days, log every activity in 15-minute blocks, not just work meetings, but the Instagram scrolls while waiting for coffee, the news channel playing in the background, the quick errands that eat an afternoon. You'll likely discover what one Fortune 500 CEO did. 37% of his week was spent on tasks that didn't align with his top 3 objectives. The solution wasn't working harder, but pruning mercilessly. He deleted 12 recurring meetings, automated low-value decisions, and reclaimed 10 hours weekly for strategic thinking. What trivial thief steals your hours? Maybe it's the group chats that buzz with urgent nothingness, the perfectionism that turns a 30-minute report into a 3-hour masterpiece of overengineering, or the just helping out tasks that derail your morning. The Stoic fix isn't time management, it's attention warfare. Guard your focus like a Roman sentry at the gates, because no one will do it for you. Technology's greatest trick is making distraction feel like choice. Tonight, ask yourself Seneca's piercing question. How much of your life have you actually lived? Not just existed through, not survived, but truly inhabited with full presence. The answer might light a fire under your next sunrise, because time isn't lost in chunks, it slips through fingertips like sand, grain by stolen grain. But here's the secret the Stoics knew. Reclaim just 20 minutes a day from the trivial, and in a year you'll have gained an entire month of life. Not more time, but more you in your time, and that changes everything. Marcus Aurelius built an empire from dawn till dusk, yet his private writings reveal a counterintuitive secret. Nowhere can a person find a more peaceful and untroubled retreat than in his own mind. This wasn't poetic escapism, it was strategic withdrawal, the 15th Stoic action for maintaining unshakable clarity. Picture Churchill during Britain's darkest hours of World War II, stealing hours to paint landscapes while bombs fell on London. His cabinet called it indulgence, he knew it was oxygen. The Stoics called these respites mental citadels, fortified inner spaces where you regroup when the world demands too much. Not as permanent hideaways, but as tactical pauses to sharpen your blade before returning to the fray. Modern neuroscience confirms what ancient philosophers intuited. The brain solves complex problems faster during downtime than when grinding relentlessly. A Stanford study found engineers solved creative roadblocks 23% faster after taking walks compared to peers staring at screens. But here's the twist: strategic withdrawal isn't just about physical rest. It's about creating psychological distance from the noise that clouds judgment. Think of a CEO who spends every Sunday morning hiking without her phone, or a teacher who meditates for 15 minutes between classes. These aren't luxuries, they're the spaces where perspective crystallizes. Apply this digitally. The average person touches their phone 2,600 times daily, a constant drip of fragmented attention. Contrast that with a tech founder we interviewed who designates one weekend monthly as a signal blackout. No emails, no social media, just paper books, long walks, and handwritten journaling. He credits these 48-hour resets with generating his company's most innovative ideas. The principle works whether you're a parent carving out 20 minutes before dawn for reflection or a student scheduling library hours without devices. The common thread: intentional disconnection to reconnect with what matters. Your challenge: block 3 hours this month for a mini retreat. It might be a silent museum visit, a solo hike, or simply turning off notifications to cook an elaborate meal. The setting matters less than the mindset. Treat this time not as stolen but as sacred. Like Churchill picking up his paintbrush while London burned, you're not retreating from the battle. You're ensuring you return to it sharper, because sometimes the most powerful action is stillness. Cato the Younger walked through Rome's opulent streets wearing the same threadbare cloak for decades, not out of poverty but principle. When senators mocked his frugality, he'd reply, "I'd rather compete in virtue than riches." This wasn't just personal preference, it was tactical. The Stoics recognized that every possession, every commitment, every yes we accumulate isn't just added to our lives, it's subtracted from our freedom. Fast forward 2,000 years, and Silicon Valley CEOs are rediscovering this truth. A founder we interviewed owns precisely 15 garments: identical black t-shirts, gray trousers, and navy blazers, a uniform eliminating daily decisions, so his mind reserves energy for billion-dollar choices. Luxury, the Stoics argued, isn't about having more, it's about needing less. Consider the paradox of modern life. Technology promises efficiency, yet we're drowning in digital clutter. The average person spends 2.5 hours daily just managing emails, notifications, and files. Ancient Rome had no inboxes, but Seneca diagnosed the same disease. It's not that we have too little time, but that we waste much of it. The solution: a ruthless subtraction, not minimalism as an aesthetic, but as armor against distraction. A finance executive transformed her productivity by applying Stoic triage to her calendar. She canceled every recurring meeting that didn't directly serve her top 3 quarterly goals, freeing up 18 hours weekly. Another leader deleted 12 essential apps from his phone, only to realize 3 months later he hadn't missed them. Here's the litmus test. When evaluating any possession or commitment, ask not, "Is this useful?" but, "Does this serve my highest purpose?" A chef's knife collection might span 20 blades because cutlery is his craft's foundation. A musician's studio overflows with instruments, but her closet holds only 7 outfits. The point isn't deprivation, it's intentional allocation. Just as Roman generals traveled light to move swiftly, modern innovators shed mental weight to pivot faster. When Steve Jobs standardized his black turtlenecks, he wasn't being eccentric. He was conserving decision-making fuel for world-changing designs. Your challenge: conduct a 30-minute Stoic sweep. Walk through your home with a box. Handle every item in your workspace, your kitchen, your wardrobe. If it hasn't been used in 90 days and doesn't spark deep joy, as Marie Kondo would say, thank it, then let it go. Next, open your calendar. Cancel 3 recurring obligations that drain more energy than they return. Finally, audit your digital life. Unsubscribe from newsletters you skim guiltily rather than eagerly. The goal isn't emptiness, it's creating space for what truly matters, because as Marcus Aurelius wrote, very little is needed to make a happy life. We just keep forgetting. Tonight, ask yourself, what 3 things, physical, digital, or emotional, can I release like sandbags from a balloon? The moment you do, you'll feel the lift. Not because your life got lighter, but because you finally stopped confusing weight with worth. What's your plan B for when plan A fails? The Roman general Scipio Africanus didn't just march his armies toward Carthage, he rehearsed retreats. Before every battle, he'd map escape routes, designate rally points, and train his troops to regroup under chaos. This wasn't pessimism, it was strategic immunity to panic. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, not to dwell on failure, but to disarm its power. Fast forward to modern space exploration. NASA engineers build spacecraft with triple redundant systems. When the Apollo 12 mission was struck by lightning seconds after launch, astronauts didn't freeze, they flipped to backup circuits with practiced calm. That's the essence of Action 17. Anticipate sabotage before it strikes, whether from external forces or your own wavering resolve. Consider how this applies to career pivots. A software engineer we interviewed spent evenings learning UX design while thriving in her coding role. When layoffs hit her department, she didn't scramble, she transitioned seamlessly into a product design position others envied. Contrast this with colleagues who'd mocked wasting time on cross-training. The Stoic insight: luck favors those who prepare for storms during sunshine. Your backup plan isn't an admission of doubt, it's a declaration of adaptability. Here's how to operationalize this. Take a current goal, launching a side hustle, securing a promotion, even improving a relationship. Now conduct a premortem. Imagine it's 6 months from now and the plan has collapsed. What likely went wrong? A competitor undercut your prices. A key supporter left the company. Your health took a downturn. List every plausible sabotage point, then design one countermove for each. A restaurateur might identify a supply chain rupture and pre-vet alternative vendors. A freelancer could automate savings during flush months to cushion dry spells. Tonight, choose one ambition and draft its contingency blueprint. Not a vague, I'll figure it out, but specific if-then protocols. If the investor says no, then I'll bootstrap with these 3 cost cuts. If the injury recurs, then I'll pivot to coaching instead of competing. Like Scipio's troops practicing retreats, you're not planning to fail, you're ensuring nothing can make you stay failed. Because true confidence doesn't come from assuming everything will work. It comes from knowing nothing can break you. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his private journal, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This simple metaphor captures the 18th Stoic action, leading with empathy. Far from the cold stereotype of unfeeling logic, true Stoicism recognized human connection as the bedrock of resilience. Picture Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, drafting furious letters to incompetent generals, then locking them in a desk drawer unsent. Those hot letters weren't just venting, they were empathy in action, creating space between impulse and response to consider the human behind the mistake. Modern neuroscience reveals why this works. When leaders address team failures with curiosity rather than condemnation, cortisol levels drop and problem-solving regions of the brain activate. A tech CEO we studied implemented blameless postmortems after project failures, not to excuse errors, but to analyze them without triggering fight or flight reactions. The result: incident reports became more accurate, solutions more innovative, and turnover dropped by 40%. This is Stoic compassion in practice, clear-eyed accountability paired with psychological safety. Contrast this with toxic Stoicism, the misused version where emotions are suppressed rather than mastered. Ancient texts describe Stoic teachers weeping at funerals, showing affection to friends, even campaigning for prison reform. Their goal wasn't emotionlessness but emotional wisdom. When a team member underperforms, the reactive manager sees only the flawed output. The Stoic leader asks, what unseen battle might they be fighting? This shift from judgment to inquiry can transform workplace dynamics. Your challenge today: identify one strained relationship, professional or personal, where you've defaulted to frustration. Before reacting, borrow Lincoln's tactic. Draft that angry email or text, then delete it. In its place, write 3 possible explanations for their behavior that have nothing to do with malice. Maybe that distant colleague is grieving. Perhaps the curt client is facing budget cuts. Like Marcus reminding himself, they dine with different gods. This exercise doesn't excuse harm, it prevents you from adding to it. Because true strength isn't shown by how hard you can push, but by how wisely you can pause. The next time someone tests your patience, remember, the Stoics saw every interaction as training. Not in enduring others, but in understanding them, and that changes everything. That person's success doesn't diminish yours. Let that truth sink in like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Envy is the thief of joy, but Stoicism offers a sharper lens. What if admiration could replace resentment? Seneca observed, "To wish that another's loss may be your gain is both foolish and inhuman." He wasn't preaching saintliness. He was exposing envy as a double-edged sword that wounds the wielder most deeply. Picture 2 violinists auditioning for the same orchestra seat. One spends rehearsals obsessing over the other's flawless vibrato, his fingers tightening with every note. The other studies her rival's technique, borrowing bowing methods to refine her own sound. Both hear the same performance, but one hears a threat, the other hears a lesson. History's greatest innovators thrived on this mindset. When Thomas Edison's lab burned down in 1914, destroying years of research, he didn't curse competitors. He rebuilt with improvements, telling reporters, "Thank goodness all our mistakes were burned up." Jazz legend Miles Davis famously hired musicians who challenged him, saying, "If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying hard enough, and if my band isn't outplaying me, I'm in the wrong band." That's Stoic admiration in action, seeing excellence not as a rival but as a beacon. Here's the pivot. Think of someone whose achievements stir discomfort in you. A colleague's promotion, a friend's thriving business. Now, dissect that reaction like a Stoic anatomist. Is their win truly your loss, or has comparison blurred your vision? Ancient philosophers practiced sympathetic joy, deliberately celebrating others' victories to train their minds out of scarcity thinking. A modern CEO we interviewed keeps a rivalry journal where he writes 3 actionable insights from competitors' successes each week. Over time, resentment transformed into inspiration, and his company's growth reflected it. Tonight, try this mental alchemy. Name 1 person you've privately envied. List 3 specific reasons for their success: late nights sacrificed, skills honed, risks taken. Then, choose 1 trait to emulate without imitation. Maybe it's their discipline, their networking strategy, or their resilience. Envy leaves you empty-handed. Admiration hands you tools. As Seneca reminded us, the man who is not jealous is not in love. But love what? Not their trophy, but the path they walk to earn it. That's how rivals become mentors, and how their light stops blinding you and starts guiding you. Epictetus stood before his students and delivered a line that still echoes through boardrooms 20 centuries later. First say to yourself what you would be, then do what you have to do, but know that progress, not perfection, is the measure. That distinction cuts through the modern obsession with flawless performance. Think of a seasoned captain correcting course mid-voyage, not as failure, but as the essence of navigation. The Stoics understood what psychology now confirms. Those who publicly acknowledge missteps don't lose authority. They build deeper trust. Consider Satya Nadella's transformation of Microsoft's culture. Early in his tenure as CEO, he admitted the company had missed mobile due to internal arrogance, a stunning confession from a tech giant. Far from weakening his position, that transparency became the foundation for Microsoft's cloud computing renaissance. Employees began sharing lessons from failed projects rather than hiding them. Stock prices tripled within 5 years. This is Stoic accountability in action. Errors become data points, not identities. The growth mindset research of Carol Dweck mirrors this ancient wisdom perfectly. Students who believe intelligence can be developed outperform fixed mindset peers not because they're smarter, but because they engage differently with mistakes. A wrong answer isn't proof of inadequacy, it's information revealing where to focus next. The same principle applies to relationships, careers, even parenting. That moment you say, "I mishandled this," to your team or teenager doesn't diminish your leadership. It demonstrates the kind of strength no title can confer. Here's where it gets personal. Recall a recent stumble, maybe a snapped response to a loved one, a miscalculation at work, or a neglected commitment. Now imagine saying aloud, "Here's what I learned from that." Feel the resistance. That's ego clinging to the myth of flawlessness. The Stoic antidote is simple yet profound. Separate the action from the actor. You're not bad for missing the mark. You're human, but refusing to examine the miss, that's where growth stalls. Your challenge this week: choose one arena, professional or personal, and voice a course correction. It might sound like, "I underestimated that project's complexity in a team retrospective," or "I spoke harshly earlier. Let me try again," to your partner. Notice how the sky doesn't fall. In fact, space opens for others to reciprocate, for collaboration to deepen, for your own shoulders to relax. Because true confidence isn't never stumbling, it's knowing you can rise each time you do. And that's how progress, step by unflinching step, becomes mastery. Marcus Aurelius described the mind as an inner citadel, an unassailable fortress where no external chaos can penetrate without permission. This isn't poetic metaphor, it's psychological architecture. Think of a medieval castle, thick walls to repel invaders, a central keep for strategic retreat, and hidden passages for counterattacks. Your mental fortress operates the same way. Every time you choose discomfort over convenience, you're laying another brick in that wall. Teddy Roosevelt's transformation from an asthmatic child gasping for breath to a Rough Rider charging up San Juan Hill wasn't genetic luck, it was deliberate conditioning. His father famously told him, "You have the mind, but you must train the body." So Teddy lifted weights in a homemade gym, boxed despite his frailty, and forced himself into the wilderness. Each small victory over physical weakness fortified his resolve for greater battles. Now bring this into the modern arena. Public speaking consistently tops global fear surveys, surpassing even death for some. But what if you treated that fear like Roosevelt treated his asthma? Not as a life sentence, but as raw material for growth. Start with micro challenges. Record a 1-minute video explaining a simple concept and post it to a private LinkedIn group. Strike up conversations with 3 strangers at a networking event, not to pitch, but to practice listening. Each time your heart races and you proceed anyway, you're not just overcoming a fear, you're reinforcing the neural pathways of courage, the Stoic twist. These challenges work best when they're voluntary and slightly absurd. A sales director we interviewed started making practice cold calls, intentionally dialing wrong numbers to rehearse handling rejection with humor. After 2 weeks, actual client rejections lost their sting because he'd already survived 100 imaginary ones. Another executive tackled social anxiety by asking grocery cashiers absurd questions like, "If avocados had personalities, would they be introverts?" The goal wasn't logical answers, but rewiring her brain to associate discomfort with playfulness rather than threat. Here's your assignment. Pick one fear that's been whispering, "You can't," in your ear. Maybe it's speaking up in meetings, negotiating salaries, or attending solo social events. Now design a 30-second challenge that's just slightly outside your comfort zone, something you could do before lunch today. Not to eliminate the fear, but to prove you can act despite it. Because mental fortresses aren't built in grand gestures. They're constructed one discomfort at a time, until what once terrified you becomes just another room in your unshakable inner stronghold. Mastery is a Stoic discipline, not the mindless repetition of drills, but the razor-sharp focus on intentional improvement. Picture a concert violinist rehearsing the same passage for hours. The amateur plays until they get it right. The master plays until they can't get it wrong. That's the difference between mere repetition and deliberate practice, the 20-second Stoic action for forging excellence. The ancient philosophers didn't just preach resilience, they engineered it through structured, purposeful effort. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal haphazardly. He dissected his thoughts with surgical precision, turning self-reflection into a daily training ground for wisdom. Consider the myth of the 10,000-hour rule. Popular culture reduced it to a simple equation: put in the time, reap the rewards. But research reveals a crucial nuance. It's not just hours logged, but how they're spent. A study of elite violinists found top performers didn't practice more than their peers. They practiced differently. Sessions were shorter but intensely focused, with laser-targeted goals like perfecting a single measure's phrasing or isolating finger transitions. Mistakes weren't glossed over, they became puzzles to solve. This mirrors the Stoic approach to skill acquisition. Identify the weakest link in your chain, then hammer it relentlessly until it becomes your strongest. Now translate this to modern careers. A software engineer doesn't become exceptional by writing the same basic code daily, but by tackling algorithms that stretch her understanding. A salesperson stagnates if every pitch sounds identical, but thrives when analyzing recordings to pinpoint moments where clients disengaged. Even parenting transforms when viewed through this lens. Reacting with patience for the 50th tantrum isn't autopilot endurance, it's emotional weightlifting, each repetition strengthening neural pathways for calm. So here's the challenge. What's your version of daily drills? Not just going through motions, but isolating one specific skill to dissect and rebuild. Maybe it's dedicating 15 minutes to crafting clearer email subject lines, or rehearsing difficult conversations aloud before meetings. A marketing director we studied kept a failure log where she recorded every campaign stumble, then designed micro-exercises to address them, like rewriting weak headlines or testing new call-to-action placements. Within months, her team's conversion rate soared. The Stoic twist: deliberate practice thrives on discomfort. Just as Epictetus trained his students to embrace criticism as growth fuel, modern masters seek feedback that stings. A professional chess player intentionally plays against opponents who exploit her weaknesses. A writer submits drafts to editors known for ruthless red pens. This isn't masochism, it's strategic self-interrogation. When you stop fearing flaws and start hunting them, progress accelerates exponentially. Tonight, pick one skill that feels plateaued. Break it into microscopic components the way a tennis pro analyzes serve, toss height, or grip pressure. Then design a 20-minute daily drill targeting just one element. Record yourself, time your responses, or measure accuracy with cold metrics. Mastery doesn't demand endless hours. It demands undivided attention to what's not yet mastered. And that's how ordinary effort becomes extraordinary results. Before the first light of dawn touched Rome's 7 hills, Marcus Aurelius would rise, light an oil lamp, and begin his morning ritual, not with frantic planning or distractions, but with deliberate stillness. His journal entries from those quiet hours reveal a mind preparing not just for the day ahead, but for life itself. When you arise in the morning, he wrote, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. This wasn't poetic musing, it was psychological armor. While modern culture glorifies the snooze button and scrambles for smartphones, Stoic mornings were engineered for mastery, not reactivity. A Navy SEAL commander we interviewed described his pre-dawn routine with striking parallels: 90 seconds of gratitude visualization, 2 minutes of breathwork to lower cortisol, and 3 intentional priorities written in a pocket notebook, all before checking any device. Chaos comes for everyone, he said. The difference is whether it finds you centered or scattered. Contrast this with the average morning alarms silenced repeatedly, notifications hijacking attention before coffee's even brewed, days starting in defensive mode rather than deliberate action. The Stoic approach flips this script. The first hour doesn't respond to the world, it prepares you to shape it. Here's how to construct your own fortress of a morning. Step 1. Hydrate and pause. Before reaching for technology, drink a glass of water, a physiological reset, and stand silently for 60 seconds, observing dawn's light or simply your own breath. Step 2. Practice premeditatio malorum. Visualize one challenge likely to arise today, a tense meeting, a tedious task, and mentally rehearse handling it with composure. Step 3. Define your virtue anchor. Choose one Stoic quality to embody today, whether patience during delays or courage in a difficult conversation. Write it on your wrist if needed. Step 4. Move with purpose. 10 minutes of yoga, a brisk walk, or even push-ups. Anything to signal to your body that you command the day, not vice versa. The final step. Fuel strategically. The ancient Greeks and Romans favored light morning meals of figs, olives, whole grains, to avoid sluggishness. Modern science confirms this. High-protein, low-sugar breakfasts stabilize energy far better than pastries or cereal. Your challenge for the next 5 days: design a Stoic morning sprint. Not a rigid 3-hour regimen, but 20 minutes of intentionality before the world intrudes. Notice how crises that once derailed you become manageable when met from a place of grounded clarity, because how you start isn't just about productivity, it's about sovereignty. And that changes everything. Seneca once wrote, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not." That last phrase holds the key to the 24th Stoic action, celebrating small wins not as stepping stones to some distant finish line, but as the actual terrain of a life well lived. Picture a novelist tracking daily word counts in the margins of her manuscript. 500 words might seem insignificant when staring at the 300 blank pages ahead, but those daily ticks accumulate into chapters, then volumes, then a body of work. The Stoics understood what modern neuroscience confirms. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter fueling motivation, isn't just released at big achievements. It sparks with every micro-victory recognized along the way. Consider how differently 2 salespeople approach their quotas. One fixates solely on the year-end bonus, grinding through calls with mounting frustration. The other ends each day reflecting on 3 meaningful interactions: a prospect's genuine question, a competitor insight gained, even a rejection that taught resilience. Over time, the first burns out while the second builds both skills and satisfaction. This isn't about lowering standards, it's about widening the lens. A marathon runner doesn't wait for the finish line to feel pride. She celebrates holding pace at mile 8, hydrating properly at mile 16, pushing through the wall at mile 20. Each is a victory in the art of persistence. Now bring this into your own life. When was the last time you paused to acknowledge a tiny triumph? The morning you woke before the alarm. The difficult email drafted with clarity. The 10 minutes of focused work without checking social media. Modern culture conditions us to dismiss these as trivial. always pointing to the next milestone. But Stoic process gratitude operates like compound interest. Small, consistent appreciations yield exponential returns in resilience. A teacher we interviewed keeps a win jar, dropping in dated notes for every student breakthrough, no matter how minor. On tough days, she pulls out 3 at random. Suddenly, a discouraging afternoon transforms into evidence of progress. Here's the challenge tonight. List 3 micro-wins from today that you'd typically overlook. Not the promotion, but the concise report that preceded it. Not the 20-pound weight loss, but the workout completed despite fatigue. Then hear Seneca whispering across centuries. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future. Because life isn't a race to some distant finish line. It's the sum of every step you've learned to love taking, and that changes everything. From the quiet pre-dawn journaling of Marcus Aurelius to the relentless obstacle training of Cotto, these 24 Stoic actions aren't isolated tactics. They're interlocking gears in a machine for mastery. Each one reinforces the others. Morning preparation fuels deliberate practice, negative visualization sharpens gratitude, and voluntary discomfort builds the resilience to detach from outcomes. Together, they form what the ancients called arete excellence of character, not as some abstract ideal, but as daily, gritty practice. Think of a blacksmith tempering a blade, hammer strikes, quenching in water, repeated heating and cooling. No single step creates the sword. It's the cumulative process that forges unbreakable strength. Unstoppability, in the Stoic sense, has nothing to do with never falling. It's about developing reflexes so ingrained that every stumble becomes a pivot, every setback a setup. Modern culture obsesses over viral wins and overnight success, but the Stoics measured progress in quieter currencies. The discipline to act when motivation fades, the clarity to distinguish control from concern, the courage to celebrate others' victories without resentment. External validation likes promotions, applause comes and goes like weather. Inner discipline is your climate. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed his enslavement into existential freedom, gave us the ultimate marching orders. First say what you'd be, then do what you must. Not wait until you feel ready, not hope circumstances align, but do. That's the heartbeat of this entire system. You don't need to master all 24 actions at once. Start with one. Maybe it's tonight's evening review, tomorrow's cold shower, or next week's digital purge. The key isn't scale, it's consistency. Like a sculptor removing one chip of marble at a time, small daily actions reveal the masterpiece within. So here's your invitation. Pick one action from these 24, just one, and commit to it for the next 7 days. Share your choice in the comments. Let's build a community of modern Stoics trading excuses for effort. And if this resonated with you, consider subscribing. More timeless wisdom is coming, and you deserve every tool to become unshakable. Because the world doesn't need more noise, it needs more people who have done the inner work. And that starts with you right now.